Welcome and thank you for joining me. This is the account with a report for day 440 of the war in Ukraine. Today I have one article I want to point out. I also have two extra news segments about the latest Russian missile and drone attack on Ukraine and the May 9th Victory Day parade in Moscow. All other updates are grouped into the usual: situation inside Ukraine, the occupied territories, Russia and Belarus, and international developments. Before we start the news though, the flashpoints along the front. Bakhmut. It seems Ukraine managed to capture quite a bit of territory around Bakhmut after the 72nd Motorized Rifle Brigade abandoned positions. Yevgeny Prigozhin, head of the Wagner PMC and the Armed Forces of Ukraine, confirmed the claim. More on that during the Russia and Belarus segment. The location is currently unclear. Inside Bakhmut, not much has changed today. Claims on social media suggested the Russian military command ordered the capture of Bakhmut by today. That claim cannot be verified, however, if true, the order to capture a certain area by a certain date failed once again. And to start the news segment, the updates on the latest Russian missile attack on Ukraine. During the night, Russia fired 25 caliber and Kh-101, Kh-555 cruise missiles at Ukraine. The air defense units destroyed 23 missiles. Explosions were heard in Kyiv, with air defense being active. According to the city military administration, all targets were destroyed and no target was hit. The police showed several wreckages of downed cruise missiles. Additionally, a shell crater about 8 meters wide and more than 2.5 meters deep, caused by Russian attacks, was discovered in one of the districts of Kyiv region. 2 cruise missiles caused damage in Cherkasy Oblast, and missile debris in Dnipro damaged a residential building, injuring a woman. And now the updates on Russia's May 9th Victory Day parade. Today is Victory Day, a holiday that commemorates the Soviet victory over Nazi Germany in 1945. It is mostly observed by Russia and former Soviet Union states. However, commemoration events are taking place at Soviet monuments all over the world. Usually, the biggest parade is held in Moscow, with many foreign dignitaries attending the event. However, last year and this year, Russia has been isolated and the parade had significantly been scaled back. It is noteworthy that this year the parade did only feature the usual T-34 tank leading the event. No other tanks have taken part in the parade, nor any other armored Usually, the biggest victory parade is held in Moscow's Red Square, with many foreign dignitaries and veterans attending the event. However, last year and this year, Russia has been isolated due to the war in Ukraine, and the parades were significantly scaled back. It is noteworthy that this year's victory parade did only feature the usual T-34 tank leading the event. No other tanks, nor any other armored tracked vehicles have taken part. Analysts believe that just 51 vehicles were involved in this year's event. That would only be a quarter of the 200 pieces of military hardware that rolled through the streets of Moscow in 2020, when Russia marked the 75th anniversary of the end of the Second World War. Sky News published a comparison between this year's and previous year's parades. Examples of commemorations to honor the fallen soldiers of the Red Army held were the events in Oslo, London, Berlin, and Italy. Of course, this event was also used for propaganda reasons. The Russian-installed governor of the Kherson Oblast, Volodymyr Zaldo, appealed to the soldiers of Ukraine to remember that our fathers and grandfathers were natives of one common motherland. Russian crew members on the ISS took part in the Immortal Regiment campaign. President of South Ossetia, Alan Gagloev, said that today the same countries that collaborated or were direct allies of Nazi Germany are again on the side of the Nazis. Leonid Slutsky, stated that crimes related to the falsification of history and the desecration of monuments to Soviet soldiers who liberated Europe from fascism will not go unpunished. Social media quickly ridiculed and analyzed the parade. Interestingly enough, it seems that this year no official lineup for the parade was released. The lack of vehicles can easily be explained by looking at the numbers collected by the Oryx project. Russia has visually confirmed lost some 10,179 vehicles since the beginning of the war. Out of those are 1,937 tanks, 838 armored fighting vehicles, 2,317 infantry fighting vehicles, 309 armored personnel carriers, 388 self-propelled artillery systems, and 195 MLRS. The aviation segment for the Victory Day parade on Red Square in Moscow and other Russian cities has been cancelled, with the official reason given the weather conditions. And now for the article I want to point out. The Kyiv Independent has released its latest Investigative Stories from Ukraine newsletter, featuring the most prominent investigations of the past week. This week's stories are Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, firm of Russian oligarch Friedman insures cars of Russian military fighting in Ukraine. Reporters Sans Frontières proves Ukrainian journalist who Kremlin denies capturing is in Russian prison. Ukrainska Pravda, BBC. Fear of spies in the early days of invasion caused multiple cases of friendly fire in Kyiv. A look at all the minor updates out of Ukraine. According to the United Nations Human Rights Agency, Russia's war against Ukraine has killed at least 8,791 civilians and wounded at least 14,815 from February 24, 2022 to May 7, 2023. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and President Volodymyr Zelensky held a meeting in Kyiv discussing the EU ammunition plan, additional sanctions against Russia, and the latest EU member state bans on Ukrainian food exports. Additionally, the two leaders attended the summit of the Special Tribunal's core group, involving 37 participants. A woman detained by Ukraine's security service has been sentenced to 12 years in prison by a court for leaking information about Ukrainian forces on the front line in Donetsk Oblast to Russia. The woman was a personal informant of the Russian military intelligence officer Sergei Dubinsky, who was involved in the downing of flight MH17 in July 2014, the SBU wrote. Next up, the latest regarding the situation in the occupied territories. Petro Andriushchenko, advisor to the Mariupol mayor, reported that Russian occupation authorities in the city have begun to mobilize workers of the public sector. Andriushchenko further stated that tanks and air defense systems from Berdyansk have been redeployed to Mariupol. So-called police officers serving under the occupation authorities are trying to flee from the southern territories of Ukraine to avoid a Ukrainian counteroffensive. Moving on to the news updates from Russia and Belarus. Vyacheslav Gladkov, the governor of Belgorod Oblast, stated on Telegram that a projectile has fallen in the Russian city of Shebekino, located not far from the border with Ukraine. Russia currently has 14 warships on combat duty in the Black Sea, 4 of which are missile carriers with a total salvo of up to 32 missiles. The governor of Nizhny Novgorod Oblast, Leb Nikitin, published a video and photos of Sacha Prilepin, an anti-Ukrainian propagandist and member of the political party A Just Russia for Truth. Prilepin, who was injured when the car he was driving exploded, has recorded his first video from the hospital and declared that he would continue to defeat anyone in the future. Yevgeny Prigozhin, the head of the Wagner PMC, stated that the combat order came down and he and his mercenaries would be deemed traitors if they are to withdraw from Bakhmut, where they have been fighting for several months. Allegedly, Wagner has only received 10% of the ammunition needed. Prigozhin further stated that one of the Russian Defense Ministry's units fled its position in Bakhmut on Tuesday, leaving a 2-kilometer section of the front exposed. He accused the 72nd Motorized Rifle Brigade of abandoning an important bridgehead where at least 500 Wagner mercenaries were killed. The Armed Forces of Ukraine released a video confirming Prigozhin's claim that the 72nd Motorized Rifle Brigade abandoned positions. Due to not safe for work content in the video, I will not be sharing it. And to wrap up the news segment, the international developments. The United States believes that Russia's war against Ukraine has not gone according to plan, so Russia has resorted to attacking Ukrainian civilian cities and critical infrastructure facilities. The Pentagon announced that it would provide an additional $1.2 billion security assistance package to Ukraine under the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, has arrived in Kyiv to mark Europe Day. Hamze Galandari, Deputy Defense Minister for International Affairs of Iran, has said that the supposed efficiency of Iranian-made weapons became clear to the whole world last year, calling Iranian weapons a game-changer. He most likely was referring to Iranian-made Shahed kamikaze drones. On Europe Day, the flag of Ukraine was raised near the European Commission building in Brussels, next to the EU flags. Next week's meeting is an important opportunity to discuss how, among other things, the G7 countries will continue to work together to ensure that Ukraine is victorious and Putin's criminal regime is held accountable for the war unleashed against Ukraine. And now for the intelligence report segment, starting with the UK Ministry of Defence. On April 28, 2023, the head of the self-declared Donetsk People's Republic announced that regional water supplies were dangerously low. Water scarcity has been a growing issue for Russian-occupied Donetsk since Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine. The Seversky Donetsk Canal, which supplies the region, remains largely under Ukrainian control, but has been frequently contested along its long route. Russian forces have likely been seeking to secure the canal to reduce water scarcity within Donetsk. The Seversky Donetsk Canal traverses through the town of Chasiv Yar, approximately 6 kilometers to the west of Bakhmut. Russia's heavy use of indirect artillery to support the capture of Bakhmut and surrounding territory has likely inflicted collateral damage to the canal and other regional water infrastructure, undermining Russia's efforts to remedy the lack of water that its invasion originally created. To compensate for its lack of success in capturing and retaining the canal, Russia is likely constructing a water pipeline to mitigate the water shortage within Donetsk city. However, this is highly unlikely to fully compensate for the occupied region's reduced access to water. A look at the latest assessment by the Institute for the Study of War. Russian forces conducted another large-scale missile and drone strike against Ukraine on the night of May 7th to 8th. Senior Ukrainian officials indicated that Ukrainian forces may be preparing to conduct counteroffensive operations in May or June. Russian-occupied Transnistria asked Russia to increase its peacekeeping contingent in the region, likely to support the Kremlin's efforts to destabilize Moldova. Russian President Vladimir Putin is attempting to use the Moscow Victory Day parade to show Russia's continued influence in Central Asia. And to wrap up the report, the evening update by the General Staff of Ukraine. During this day, the enemy launched 20 missile and 30 airstrikes, fired about 30 rocket salvo fire systems at the positions of our troops in populated areas. The enemy used 17 air-launched cruise missiles, 15 of which were destroyed by our defenders, and 3 more S-300 missiles on Kramatorsk and Kostiantynivka to launch missile strikes. The civilian infrastructure was destroyed. The probability of launching missile and airstrikes on the entire territory of Ukraine remains high. The enemy continues to concentrate its main efforts on the Liman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Marinka areas. During the day, the enemy carried out almost 30 attacks on the specified areas of the front. The fiercest battles continue for the cities of Bakhmut and Marinka. In the Kupiansk direction, the enemy tried to improve the tactical position, conducted offensive actions near the settlements of Maziotivka and Stelmakivka, but was unsuccessful. In the Liman direction, the enemy conducted unsuccessful offensive actions in the area of Bilohorivka during the day. The enemy continues to advance in the direction of Bakhmut. During the day, the enemy conducted unsuccessful offensive actions in the city of Bakhmut, as well as in the direction of the settlements of Ivanivske and Stupochki. In the Marinka direction, units of the defense forces repelled numerous enemy attacks in the area of the city of Marinka. On May 8th, the Russian occupiers began removing preschool and school-aged children along with their parents, as well as educators and other public sector employees, from the city of Kamyanka-Dniprovsk, Zaporizhia Oblast. Few people were willing. Evacuation is carried out to Berdyansk. At the same time, all medical workers of the local hospital were called to work. And that's it for today's report. Should you be interested in details, you can find links to every article I mentioned in the description as usual. If you enjoyed the report and found it informative, please consider sharing it with others and giving me a like. Thank you for tuning in and have a great day. You are listening to The Account. Slava Ukraini.